Well, hello everybody. Welcome to another video. Today's doodle dump will involve us drawing hands, and I decided to make our page a little bit bigger this time around, just so we have a little bit more space to play with. So, hands. Hands, 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 hands. Okay. Story time. Up until I started college, I would never draw more than 4 fingers on a hand. Or, well, I guess it would be like 3 fingers and a thumb. Mostly because I was scared and I didn't really know how to fit the other one in there. I didn't know how to scale things down. So I'm going to draw the first one here. This is how I would draw hands. You know how you draw like the turkey back here? I'll zoom in a little more. This is how I would draw my hands. And it kind of looks okay, but it honestly was not this good. I think I just can't draw like that anymore. But, okay, in this case, we're just going to make it a turkey, because that's what it reminded me of. It makes me so happy to remember, back in, elementary school, and you would, draw turkeys and, chickens like this. I don't know. I don't even know how you would do that. I just don't remember. But, funny fact, this is how I used to draw hands. But we're not going to use that in a doodle dump. We're not. That was just my short introduction to hands. Hands. How do I approach them now? Well, I put a lot of different ideas in my head whenever I actually draw hands. I've seen so many tutorials that I can amass everything in my head and then it starts making sense to me. But I'm going to try to explain it in the ways that made more sense to me and that made things click. So, first things first, let's make sure that we know the size of our screen. And then hands. Well, if you are drawing just the hand, I like to draw it like this. What is this shape, you might ask? Well, this shape is a top rounded shape, and that's going to be where your fingers are going to come from. Okay, so this is the top of the hand, top. And this is the bottom of the hand that connects to your wrist, so bottom. I like to make them rounded because that helps with the creasing and the connection with the actual wrist. So we'll go into that a little bit later. But this bottom side is a little bit smaller, and this one is a little bit wider than the bottom. Now, from this point on, and we're looking at the hand from the top right now. So I like to divide it in half. And then this is going to give me, and then we divide it in half again. Boom, boom. Now, this is going to give us a couple things. I'm going to erase these. This little square right here, this is an indication or where your thumb, little fleshy part, is going to come out of. So, I like to make it like a little cone. Okay? Like a little trapezoid coming out. And then that's the little fleshy part right here. Boom, boom, boom. And then it's like a little tube, little cylinder, into a little cylinder, into where the actual top of the thumb is going to be. And that's normally like this rounded shape, and then the top part is flat. Okay, so that gives us where our thumb is going to be. What are we going to do with the fingers though? How do we decide where the fingers are going to go? they're all spread out on the hand. And, well, you know, how do you like manage that? Well, the reason that we divide it into 4 is because it's very simple. Just divide it again. And now you have the location on your hand without the fingers, without the digits, where they're gonna come out of. So I like to indicate the middle, and this is gonna be where the knuckle is, the knuckle of the hand. And then from there, I like making strings. Just little tiny, like, just stick figures. And you'll understand why in a couple of minutes. From here, just looking at, we always have reference in front of us. You will always have the perfect reference for a hand, unless unfortunately you don't have any hands, which I apologize if that's the case. But if that's the case, just ask your buddy to reference for you. And if you're drawing with your mouth because you don't have any hands, you are amazing. Just know that, okay? Well, your hand, you always have a reference right in front of you. So you can actually distinguish how many parts of the hand or how many parts the fingers are broken into. And boom, just by bending it, I understand that we have 3. And if we bend it completely in half, it kind of matches up. So this length is a little shorter than this one, and then we have this one. So we're going to divide it into 3. And remember, the reason that we did it curved is because the fingers arc. So we're going to do 1, 2 divisions, and then provides us with 3 fingers, or the 3 segments of our fingers. Some fingers are longer than the others. So at this point, you can go in and like make the little like adjustments as you go in and draw every single individual one. So let's say we draw this one. So we know that it has to come in within this area. Let's take a little cone into the next knuckle, a little cone into the next knuckle, and then the top of the digit. And we have 1 finger. We're going to do the same thing with the index. So cone, knuckle by just a spear, cone, knuckle, and then digit, or the fingernail, you know. This finger and this finger right here that I'm going to draw right now are roughly the same size. It's only that the fact that the middle part is arched more higher up, that's the only difference. That's why it sticks out more. So it might not be the case with everybody, but in general, that's roughly the case. The ring finger tends to be a tiny bit smaller. Normally you can get away with it being the same size as well. And then we have our little pinky finger. So if we look at our hand, it's moved a lot farther down, but it would probably be at the longest, it'd be about the top 3rd digit, or the digit part of the actual ring finger. So if it ends right there, we just have to divide it from that point on. You know, we divide it into 3 again. Since it's a little shorter, we take these lines away because we don't consider them. So now we have our little finger, right? And these knuckles, if you look at your hand as well, they create lines coming from the knuckle. If you treat this as an actual shape that sticks out, you can create the lines for the tendons, and then it goes into the wrist, right? And arms are going to have to be a whole separate section. That's going to require its own video because it's wrists and arms are probably one of the hardest things to explain. So I have to really come up with an interesting one. And just to keep this one the same type of style, ish than the other ones, not as bulky. Well, there you go. In general, this is the approach that I take with hands. So the reason that I do it like this is because it allows me a lot of mobility. And since I start thinking of everything as basic shapes, I can start moving them around and still know where everything is supposed to go. Let's make just a random shape right here. Let's say we want our hand like a fist. See, before I understood how to draw anatomy, I would just go in, make a little block, boom, 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 and it'd be something like that. You know, you can make cartoon fists really, really easy. And then, so something like that would be something that I drew before. But when I started trying to understand a little bit more and I wanted to get more into an illustration type of feel for my drawings instead of cartoony, I had to understand a little bit more of how the fingers moved. So in this case, this is curving around this way. So we are going to find the middle point. And a fun way to find the middle point between two sections is to divide it into an X. And then that cross section right there, that'll provide you the middle point. You can do that a lot with perspective stuff. So let's say you wanted to find the middle point between this one, that one, and that one, right? So you go an X from both corners. And then that middle point, you can just bring it up to the top and then just connect them. And you're always going to have perfect symmetry. Boom, boom, boom. That way you don't have to guess. That's like engineering and drafting technique. That's what like they do with like intro level stuff. So let's get rid of this one too. I know we don't normally erase when it comes down to these doodle dumps, but I think it's more like a lesson right now, more so than a doodle dump. It's more of a lesson of like how to draw hands. So we're gonna have the middle point. We found it, and then we drag that middle point to the middle of where the back of our hand is gonna go. And that's gonna give us the midpoint. We're gonna do the same thing from the side. We're gonna find the middle point, and we're gonna drag it up, and it goes all the way around. So once we have that, we start dividing the other sections so we can discover exactly what we did here and discover where our digits are going to come from. Since this is being curved and it's going into perspective, you're going to get the size of this being smaller. And also remember that we decided that it's going to be in a curve, so it's going to change slightly the outcome of our drawing. Like, even though I did forget at the beginning, I would probably realize it, you know, halfway into the drawing that it might be too flat. So then I would have to like go back in and change it. It's a good thing that I caught it right now, because otherwise the hand would look a little bit weird. Okay, so let's just call it like that. I know it looks really complicated right now, but in all like simplicity's sake, it's gonna look like that. Okay. I just added a lot of lines, trying to subdivide it and everything. But that's something that you normally do in your head, or very, very lightly by ghosting the lines. You don't really need to draw out every single line. So we have here, we have our knuckle at the top. And then from here, we understand that our digits are kind of chubby, like going sideways. So they're more like ovals. So we're gonna give ourselves like an entryway for it, and then from there we can start creating the actual digits. So we're making a fist. So the digits would go down, completely down into our first segment. and see how you don't even have to worry so much about knowing like how your fingers are going to get smaller in perspective, because you already have that sizing. So as long as you're following that, like those lines down, and you remember that you're still keeping like a curvature to them, because you know you still curve, you're gonna end up with something decent. After the first digit, you get to your knuckle, which is just a sphere. And that sphere allows you to decide the direction of the next segment. So in this case, we're going to go in. And I always try to draw through my drawing. Next link, and then the knuckle. And now you have a pretty decent hand that's going like this. So we have our hand right here. We're gonna look at the other one. We're gonna do this one. So we're gonna make this into the small pinky finger, so we're gonna make this a little bit smaller. Or we'll just make the thumb right there. Remember how we split it in half? And this is the area where the thumb would come out of? Well, if we look at our hand, we have our little fleshy, like the little fleshy part with the little extra skin, into our little cylinder, into our actual digit. Now, this is a rough estimate of how it would look. Don't judge me too much. But if I went back in and I just traced the lines, it would look something like this. And I'm by no means a hands expert. I am just telling you guys kind of how it works in my head. I discover new ways to draw things all the time. And I'll be the first to tell you, like, I'm by no means like an expert. But I get by. And I can teach you guys a few things. See, it looks a little weird right here because we haven't explained the other little segments that go into the actual palm. But let's move away from actually doing these sort of drawings. I want to explain what the bottom of the palm looks like first. So we're going to leave that. We're going to leave that into our doodle dimp. And we're going to explain the bottom of the hand. We're going to zoom in a little. So bottom of the hand, it's the same thing. We'll make it a little smaller. Curved upper part. Curved lower part. Tapered, so the bottom part is smaller. We're gonna divide it into 4. And we're gonna decide where the knuckles are gonna go. We're gonna have our thumb coming out from here. And we're gonna have our digits coming from our knuckles. And I really, really like keeping everything super loose, even if it's just like gestural drawings like this. The reason I do that is because I like to flesh out everything before I actually end up drawing it. Most of my drawings will end up with like super really thin lines, building onto slightly thicker lines, building into slightly thicker lines, until you end up deciding exactly what you want to do. So I like to start with a really, really loose sketch when I start drawing things. But for right now, we're just focusing on the palm. So let's not worry so much about the fingers. We're just gonna put little indications of them. Okay, so we have our palm and we have our thumb. So this is going to be the hand from, it could be from the top or the bottom. But for right now, we're going to focus on the bottom. And these are the elements that go into the bottom part of the palm. So if you look at your hand, just look at your hands right now. You're going to turn it a little bit, so you end up seeing the little bumps that stick out on the bottom of your digits right here. Well, that little section right here, I like to divide it with a little jelly bean, like a long jelly bean that goes across the first top part. Remember, we split it into 4. It's this part right here, right? That gives me a lot of information. It tells me that my hand can't bend past that certain point because it has a little squishy part, right? But more so than anything, it gives me an indication of where all those little tiny bumps are going to be. Yeah, you'll mass them all into one big shape, and if you really wanted to, you can go in and do individual ones, because it's literally just a knuckle from underneath. That's your big knuckle. That's just the little bumps from your knuckle. But I like to mass it because it makes it easy for me. The next shape is the thumb pad, as I like to call it. The thumb pad takes over this little section. Thumb pad is the little fleshy part that's connected to the bottom of your thumb. I like to think about it as if it was like a chicken drum, when you're eating like fried chicken. You grab it and then you have your little thumb part right there. That squishes, and that shows up whenever you're drawing from the sides. So you need to really consider this little section. That section and the little palm part are probably the most important parts to keep in mind. And then we have the other side of the palm. And it's another tiny fleshy area. It's a little skinnier. It's probably a little skinnier than that. It just goes out to the edge of the actual palm. That gives you this big gappy area. This big gappy area is the area that sinks in. Boop, 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 boop. See that? So you have negative space right here. That's where the hand folds. That's where you can squish it like an umbrella. That's the negative area that you have to consider. So knowing those 3 sections, now you can start drawing hands in a bunch of different ways. Let's see, did I make a new layer? I did make a new layer. Okay. So let's say you have your hand as a profile. Oh, why is this not working? No, it's because it's not seen. You can't see it. Okay, so let's say you have your hand from the side. This is your wrist. Boom, 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 boom. So from the profile view, you're still curving it, so you still have to make sure that you have a curvature to your hand. You're still gonna divide it into 4. And just remember, whenever you're drawing profile, everything has a curvature, so you never just see the complete side of things. In this case, we'd see a little bit of the top still, or the bottom, depending on what side you want to actually draw it in. And it would be, you'd still be able to see a little bit. Add depth to your drawings. Don't take the easy way out. Always add a little more depth. Okay. The thumb would come from this section, coming out, boom, 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 into perspective, right? Digit number 1, digit number 2, digit number 3, and digit number 4. We're drawing through the drawing. Section 1, section 2, section 3. Now to add more depth, you can just show an indication of the fingers going around the hand by drawing it underneath. That's completely optional. It's not really needed right now because, we're not trying different hand shapes. I'm just showing you guys what it looks like when you draw it from the side. So it looks kind of flat right now. But if we start remembering that there's a little fleshy part in this little section, we can just add the little fleshy part to the drawing. The little thumb, the thumb squishy part. And even this side, if there's a slight curvature, you'd see that one on the side. So the moment that you start adding those, let's make this a little lower in opacity. If you start tracing over them, you start seeing that it starts giving your hand shapes. Remember the little knuckles, knuckle, knuckle, digit. We're going into fingers next. Little fleshy part that gets cut by the thumb going into perspective. Other fingers, other knuckles, and connecting it. Okay? So this is roughly what a hand would look like when you actually trace it in perspective or in profile. You start seeing that it starts acquiring a little bit more anatomy. What's happening? You start seeing that the hand, if you start seeing it in the form of shapes and actually follow these little guidelines, it becomes really easy to just build your hand up. Now we are going to get past just profile and top and bottom view, and we're just going to draw some hands. Okay, so even though we had like a nice little 20-minute intro, let's just draw a bunch of hands for fun. We're going to draw random shapes, and then we're going to just draw hands, and we're going to try to like get as many as we can in a while. So let's say, and this would be like a normal approach for me for exploring, hand shapes. Remember how I just made like little stick figure lines? Well, it's for situations like this. I want to be able to capture something really quickly, but I don't want to saturate my page with a bunch of lines that might confuse me later on. So I just try to do the 3 digits with stick figures, like with just lines. And that gives me enough information to be able to go on. So in this case, the thumb is going to be on this side. So I need to figure out where it's going to come from, how far it's going to come down, and if it's going to even show. So now that we have this, let's draw a little bit of a forearm. Okay, and we're going to start building it up the way that I taught you guys right now. So you have your knuckle, we have our subdivisions, and we're going to start making cylinders coming out, cylinder, cylinder, cylinder. Cylinder into knuckle, into cylinder, into knuckle, into cylinder. Cylinder into knuckle, cylinder into knuckle, into the top of the digit. And one more time. Cylinder into knuckle, cylinder into knuckle, and then you have your little fleshy parts. Okay, so now that I'm going to start cleaning it up, I take into consideration the little fleshy parts that I found, remember having in this section, and the ends of the poem. And we're going to, like I said, we're going to go into wrists and stuff like that later. Oh, this is a perfect example. Remember the reason that I decided to make it curved on the bottom is for little creases that you get whenever you connect it to the wrists. Don't ask me why, I just really like the way that looks. In this case, we're gonna make the thumb come out a little bit. Okay, we're gonna go for like a little crazy look. Okay, let's just clean up the lines a little bit. See how it looks like. Number knuckles are just on top, so you start building on top of them. And you remember, you have to keep in mind the order of how things overlap over each other. So you have your finger. So this cylinder overlaps over that knuckle, but this other cylinder is behind this one. So you have to keep that in mind. So you can get those cool, like, looking bends that come along with drawing fingers. You see those little digits right here? Those little overlaps? That's how you get those. You have to keep in mind what goes over what. So in this case, this is coming from underneath. This one would be on top, and then the digit. Okay. And these are some pretty crazy looking hands, like, you know, like somebody that's really stressed out or like trying to grab onto something. In this case, the digit would probably go over the little fleshy part inside. Maybe some of those too. Then you can just push things back by giving it a little bit of cross edge. Okay. You start seeing, like, roughly what I mean. Cool. Cool. Okay. Interesting hand. Probably not something that I would end up using, but interesting hand it is. I like playing with hand shapes just because every character has very interesting hands. So in this case, let's make it a little bit to the side. And we're gonna squish it in. So we're gonna bring the little squishy pad and all those muscles in. And there is no exact way to start your hands. As long as you keep all of these elements in consideration, you can start by breaking it down into little shape pads. You know, in this case, I want to make like a cone shape with the fingers, like this. So I just start drawing lines that go along with the elements that I've drawn. Let's see. When you're drawing like that, your wrist, see? You have perfect reference right in front of you all the time. See that my thumb is sticking out a little bit more. Maybe my hand is pushing out a little bit more. But I'm not deviating a lot from the basic shape. I'm just using my reference to get it perfect. And from this point on, we just start building towards the middle. And slowly, by just adding the really small elements of the shapes into your drawing, you can start developing the drawing to look exactly how you want it. So I know it looks super messy right now, but I'm just layering everything that I just told you guys on top. And I'm going to go in and trace over it so you guys can see what I mean by having all the elements in there. Okay, so let's say we wanted just a hand somewhat complicated, you know, something that normally wouldn't be used. So we're gonna go back down a little bit and we're gonna trace it. So we already have the little fleshy parts right here into the wrist. And that's how you understand how those little fleshy parts go. The top part, like the most outermost part, would be the thumb, going to the knuckle, going to the little fleshy area, into yeah, into like the thumb flesh area that's getting squished inside. So I'm pushing these two together, essentially causing like a little butt crack scenario. And something similar is going to happen with the top squishy part right here. We understand that our knuckle's right here, but our hand is getting pushed back because you are actively pushing it to be like that. And this is where having this indication is going to help you a lot, because even this little top fleshy area, it still compresses. It's like little pillows. So whenever you have your hands in this type of scenario, they would leave a crease. And that crease plays a little bit of a role in getting it to look exactly how you want it. This top digit would be in front of the next digit, covering it a little bit, into the next one, and then maybe even this one comes in a little bit, you know, so it's in front of that. You get the compression from the little tiny pad part, and you push back the areas that you want to push back. Remember the little triangle that I talked to you about? Fleshy area, fleshy area, fleshy area, and you get the little void. That's normally where you put your shadows when you squish your hands like that. And there you go. You have a squished up hand. Let's get our hands back. And, well, all this applies very nicely to hands that are very detailed. But what if you just wanted to draw normal cartoon hands? Like, isn't that simple, Rod? Yeah, it's very simple. If you keep the same elements in mind, you can even make incredibly cool ones. So let's say we're going to have two hands. Okay? And we're going to see how different we can make them. This one's just going to be like a normal regular hand. So we're going to have a regular wrist. And this one's going to have like the Mickey glove into a cartoony flat hand. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to divide it in half. We're going to divide it in half. And we're going to draw some fingers. But let me move these up a little bit because I want a little more space. Let's move these two. Okay. So in this one, we're going to do just like 3 digits. So instead of dividing this into, into 4, we're going to divide this into 3 sections, and we're going to have our fingers coming out. We're going to have our knuckle first. We're going to draw our knuckle right in the middle of the segment. So in this case, we don't really need this middle line. Okay, so at this point, we can draw our hand, and it's going to be touching the ground and pushing out. Just draw our digits, and with Mickey Mouse, like Mickey hands and cartoon hands, if depending on how cartoony you want to do it, just draw little sausages. You just draw little sausages and it would look perfectly fine. Like, just little sausages. You don't have to worry too much about like details about anything. Cartoon hands that's why it's simple. You can just play around with them. Same thing here. Remember, thumb comes out roughly from this part, but we're going to make it coming down. So I don't like that. Okay, we're going to push it even more. It's going to come out still from that same section, but it's going to be coming in a little bit. I want to make it look like it's touching the ground. Yeah. Okay, so if we follow the same things, we have cylinder into the top of the thumb. That's cylinder, top of the thumb, like a little sausage. You reduce the amount of digits, so you keep it super simple by just making it into a little sausage right here, a little sausage right there. So we're going to draw the same hand And there you go. Even those lines follow where the knuckle would go along on the hand. So even cartoons like, you know, Mickey Mouse and like super simple ones like that, like they still have a sense of anatomy. Again, with the more complex hand, you're gonna have the same amount, like normal amount of fingers, so it's gonna be 4. Gonna give it a little depth. So at the end of the shape, we're just gonna create a little bit of depth, and then from here, we're gonna establish where our knuckles are, and we're gonna draw our segments. So the top segment, knuckle, top segment, knuckle, top segment, knuckle, top segment, knuckle. Into second part, knuckle, second part, knuckle, second part, knuckle, second part, knuckle. Into the part that's going to connect with the ground, the digits. Okay, and then just build up the other parts as if they were 3D shapes. So cylinders and spheres. Cylinders and spheres. Like, you really just have to, like, keep that in mind. They're cylinders and spheres. You'll be fine as long as you actually start understanding things as geometric shapes. So we have here, we have our little fleshy area underneath. We draw it so we understand where the thumb is going to come out of. The cylinder into the knuckle, into the top of the thumb. And in this case, we want it squishing too, or bending a little bit so we can represent that it's touching the ground. Okay. This one's going to be pointing towards us. This one's going to be a little bit to the side. This one's going to be a little bit more, and this one's going to be turning even more so. So you get a much more complicated hand, but it's the same concepts as this one. Okay. But Rod, what do you do if you have a really big hand and your fingers, they're like the Hulk, you know, you have to make it super thick. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have a big shape, nice and wide, but it's going to retain the same elements. Boom, boom. Rounded part, that's wider. Rounded part, slightly, it doesn't even have to be that much, but I just like to make it rounded. Then we're going to just draw like a super big wrist. Right? And we're going to just start breaking down the elements. We want to give it some thickness. You never want to have just the shape. You want to make it into a 3D shape. So in this case, you want it to point that way. So you have a little bit of depth. Now do the same thing. Split into half. Split into the other half, so you can identify where your fingers are going to go. At this point, I'm drawing the bottom of the hand. So I'm going to establish where my pads on my palm are going to go. So we have our thumb pad. That's going to indicate where our thumb is going to come out of. The edge of the thumb, the pad on the hand on the other side, and the little tiny little part right here. So we've explained that. And we're gonna have big, thick fingers. So, you know, here we've been tapering them to stay within that shape. And we're gonna do the same thing, but only in this case, we just have to make them super bulky. So, knuckle, and then we're gonna have it come in. Okay, gonna do the same thing with this one. There's more overlap when it comes down to the actual shapes, so you have to keep that in mind. Ooh, and I like learned a really cool trick when trying to understand where the fingers are gonna go, and I'll explain it next. And in this case, I'm just making the fingers come, like he's going like. Okay, so we have our thumb, little pad. The thumbs would be huge in a hand like this. The digits in general would be pretty big. So you can draw hands like that. Really big. Like those look much more manly than, this one. Like this one. Or this one. I don't know if you guys could see that. I'll have to go back and look at the actual video, because I might have to make that camera a little bit smaller on my screen. Okay. Ooh, but Rod, how do we draw girl hands? Girl hands are hard. Girl hands are tricky. Well, girl hands are interesting. I normally like to keep them nice and slender. We're gonna give it some depth as well. And with girl hands, it's interesting for me, because I normally just tend to keep the two digits in the middle together, and it gives me like a fancy look to the drawings, and it makes it very easy for me. So let's start with the whole division of things, right? Boom, boom, boom. We divide it into fours, divide it into segments so we know where our fingers are going to come out of. And normally this is the approach that I take to drawing women hands. And I take this roughly from just watching, a lot of Disney movies, seeing a lot of illustrators that tend to do something like this. Not quite, not all of them, but like a bunch of them do. And these little tricks help. With women, I normally remove a digit. So they only get 2 instead of 3. If I'm drawing women really quickly and I just want to come up with a really nice hand style, that's 3 digits. I normally do 2 digits because it's normally like really subtle. They're not like very aggressive. So that's one trick that you can do to, stylize it. I like to make the tops of the fingers a little bit pointier. That would be a woman's finger, and this would be like a dude's. So I make the tops a little bit pointier than it would be with a guy. And I normally try to fan them out. I think of them as fans at the end of somebody's body. So normally when it comes down to, placing them on a hand, it normally looks very spread out, and the fingers tend to fan out even more so than normal. Ta-da! Let's see. Let's try. You can start with the fingers too. Once you understand the concepts, you can start adding in reverse order. And that's the beauty of it. You don't have to have my specific way of going about it. But if you learn the basic concept of the hand, then it just becomes easy to place them in any way, shape, or form that you need. And even more so whenever you're actually looking at reference in video and then you realize, oh, that's that shape. Oh, this is new. Oh, this is really cool. Very, very cartoony hands can be just made with circles that follow the same concepts. See what I mean? So this is my approach to hands. Well, seeing as the video is already 50 minutes long, and I'm pretty sure you don't want to sit here all night trying to watch me draw hands, I want you to go into your own sketchbook using your own hand, and I want you guys to draw some for me. Tag me at Instagram, and my Instagram is right underneath, right here. Draw a page full hands. Let me know if this actually worked. And, you know, I'd love seeing your guys' work, so you guys keep me company. And I really do appreciate that. I'm glad that you guys actually enjoy these. It didn't end up being much of a doodle dump because we didn't fill out the page, but I hope you guys learned a little bit. That'll be it for the video today. And you know what? Even though we didn't fill out the page, I still had a great time. So, you wonderful people, I hope you have a fantastic weekend, a great start to your weeks, and I hope all your drawings come out the way you want. So, I'll see you guys in the next doodle dump, next video, whatever I decide to upload. And for more information, follow me on one of my other social medias. You won't be disappointed. I post every day. So, see you guys later. Take care. See you in the next one.